here we are. We're now starting the second portion of today's webinar, Best Practices for Public Legal Information. And this is the workshop component, the self-assessment and quality mark portion. So this is a 30-minute segment, and you are going to walk us through the self-assessment. So welcome to our workshop. We've got some tools here ready for you. And just to let everybody know what they can expect over the next 30 minutes is this is a demo, and we will walk you through the online self-assessment. You can find that self-assessment online. The link is here, betterlegalinfo.ca/self-assessment. We've invited attendees to bring public legal information. So if you have that on hand, that's great. You can refer to your own work as we go through the workshop. And we've also provided a link, and you may wish to refer to this sheet as well. It's a worksheet, and it itemizes the best practices and indicators in relation to those practices. So we'll do the demo. We anticipate, 15-20 minutes, and then we'll try to save room for questions at the end. And with that, we're going to get started. I'm going to jump out of my screen, and Drew is going to share his screen because he's got a demo prepared for us. Drew, over to you.
That's great. I'm just going to share my screen. So folks should now see the Better Legal Information website on the screen with—
And I see that, Drew.
With the self-assessment page here. I'm here in the self-assessment area. I've got a second tab open as well that I'll be toggling back and forth. And it's a page from our Dial Law website that we operate at People's Law School, which has an example of the quality mark in action on it. And I'm going to walk through assessing this page in the self-assessment to show how it qualified for the quality mark, and then answer any questions that come up through that. So here I'm going to click into starting the self-assessment. As I mentioned earlier, each of the 8 high-impact best practices have one question in the self-assessment, and the format is that you're asked, does your information follow this best practice? So in this case, say who made it. There's some help with scoring. So here, for a yes answer to this question, your information must have at least 2 of the 3 indicators for this best practice. And then 4 of the best practices, the first 4, are you need to get a yes answer in order to qualify to use the quality mark. So here I'm going to reveal, expand that first accordion so I can see the indicators. So the information says the name, explains to gain people's confidence, includes contact information. So back over here on the information that we're assessing, Dial Law, Service of People's Law School. It's also got a blurb down below here about People's Law School and a link to contact information. So I feel pretty confident that I can answer yes to this first question, and then click the check button, get a little feedback, and carry on to the next question.
Drew, I just want to jump in to highlight one of the points that you made, which is that the first 4 of the 8 best practices are mandatory for the application of the quality mark. So those ones are all really a yes or no. And we'll see in later questions, the second set of 4, that we have different options. There's the different getting there component to it. So just thought I'd flag that for people who are using this the first time, that there is a distinction between the first half and the second half of the test.
Exactly. Yeah. So here we are on the second best practice, say where the information applies. And the indicators in this case are just 2. So say the location where the information applies, and make the jurisdiction easy to see. And to follow this best practice, we need at least one of those 2 indicators. So going back to my information here, this page on getting temporarily laid off. So we're indicating over here on the page in this shaded box, this information applies to British Columbia, Canada. So that best practice, we need one of the indicators so we can confidently say yes and check that one and a bit of feedback. And then moving on to the third one, we're now into review the information for legal accuracy and say you've done so. And so here the indicators are say you've reviewed, or sort of do the review rather, say you've done it, and provide information about the reviewer's expertise. And here we need 2 of the 3. All right. One thing I'll note, we say here for the legal content. So there is information on public legal information websites or websites from others that have some public legal information pages and then some other pages. So there's not a requirement to do a legal review on the other information elsewhere on your website. So it's really the legal content that we're spotlighting here around the review for legal accuracy. And so then back over to our dialogue page. And here we saw this during the earlier presentation. There was an example from dialogue, how we indicate that there has been a review. And then at the bottom of pages, we spotlight the reviewer and provide a link over to their website so I can dig further into the credentials of that reviewer and see, deepen my sense of trustworthiness in this information, if you will. And so here we needed 2 of these 3 things. So this one, I know we've reviewed the information for legal accuracy at People's Law School, but so critical is for your user to know. So that's why the second indicator is so critical. And we've got 2 or even actually 3 of the indicators here, so we can click yes, we've done that best practice, and then carry on.
And just to highlight that last portion, Drew, because you really showed us how you could follow the link from the lawyer's profile to the firm website. And I believe you mentioned this, but it maybe bears reemphasis, is that was found to be quite an influential, or it was a high impact practice for people who are reviewing legal information. Is that right?
Totally. We found in our own testing that providing more context for the review, with a link over to a bio or a headshot, people really noted that. Like, we had them think out loud as they were doing the testing and share what was on their mind. And so many of the testers were like, oh, that really, seeing that person practices wills and estates, and I'm looking at this page on dealing with an estate, that really amplifies my sense of confidence that they know what they're talking about and I can trust this information.
Excellent. Thank you.
So we're going to click next and go on to now best practice number 4, include the date of the last legal review, so the currency date. And here we need 2 of 3 indicators. And the indicators are include the date, make the date easy to see, and explain the importance of the date. So on our dialogue page, we've included the date here, reviewed in March 2020. Make it easy to see. To be honest, I think we could do better on this. It's a little bit small, but it's got a shaded box that is eye-catching. And so that's solid in terms of, I think, meeting that second indicator. Explaining the importance of it, we actually could do better on this. We haven't done that on the on the dialogue site. We have on the People's Law School site, but that's something we want to add to the dialogue site, is explaining the importance of the date. I showed you the example earlier of how the Disability Alliance was doing that nicely on their help sheets, and others do it as well. And I think that we could step up our game at People's Law School in that score. But we did meet 2 of the indicators, which were positions us to say, yes, we follow this best practice, and now to check that and get some feedback there. And then moving on to best practice number 5, say who or what the information is for. As Paula, you noted, for these next 4, these final 4 questions, each of them now has a getting there, which is a single point, as a third option. And the help with answering lets us know that if we get at least one indicator, we can answer getting there. And if we get a majority of the indicators, we can answer yes. So in this case, your information follows this best practice if it identifies the audience, identifies the purpose, and states the audience or purpose front and center. So back on our getting temporarily laid off page, we've got your employer says they have to lay you off. Learn your rights if you're temporarily laid off from work. So I think a solid job of explaining who this is aimed at, the audience, and the purpose of the information, helping someone understand their rights if they're in that situation. So, and then that was in the very lead paragraph. So stating it front and center. So I'll select yes with that one and click check. And we're moving along here. Now
and I'm just noticing, Drew, that this this review process is going very smoothly. I mean, this is effectively the process that anybody seeking to apply the quality mark to their material would go through, and it really is step by step. You're showing us how to use the help with answering function, for example, how to do the scoring, things to look for in your materials to go through it. So this is really the process that you follow, and just a reminder, it's 12 out of 16. Is that the required level of plus the 4 non-optional, the 4 mandatory at the beginning?
That's right. So yeah, the total score out of 16 points is minimum 12, and those first 4 where there's only a yes/no option, so 2 points or 0, you need to get all 4 with 2 points.
Excellent. Okay.
So here,
sorry to interrupt. You're breezing through this. It's great.
Awesome. So here with best practice number 6, there's a bit more involved here. With making your information understandable, there's a lot of components to that, like I spoke to earlier. And so there's 7 indicators here from taking a user perspective, some to do with readability, measuring readability, and testing with your audience, for example. This Flesch Kincaid grade level, I'll just linger on here for 30 seconds. There's a wide array of readability measures and a wide array of readability tools that allow you to measure for readability. At People's Law School, we use Readable Pro, which has a low-cost subscription that allows you unlimited use of it. You can use it for free. I think it's 3 times a day or something like that. And it's at readable.io is the website address. And that tool, like many others, provides a number of measures as a output when you either put a URL into the tool or copy and paste text into the tool. And we pay attention to the Flesch Kincaid grade level. It gives you what it sounds like, a grade level that your information is readable by someone at a grade 6.5 level. And it's sort of in the mid-range of the various readability measures. Some are a little bit, there's sort of a surreal variation in how different tools provide different measures, but this one's kind of in the mid-range, and it's a very widely used one. It's embedded into Microsoft Word, to give you an example, where right from Word, you can assess the Flesch Kincaid grade level of any writing that you are producing. So here, take my word for it that we've covered off 4 of these. So that's half out of 7 would be 4. or more of these indicators being met would allow us to say yes. What I have found is that at times we've been doing and getting there on some of these ones, number 6, understandability, and number 7, design. This one is sorry, I'll just click to the next. Here, the second last one is the design best practice. And it also has 7 indicators, from using white space to putting important information first, headings, scanning, techniques that help with scanning, that is, visuals, designing with the audience front mind, and testing. I'll just highlight this one. This is, I think, an underappreciated part of design. You could call it part of just information organization, but is to put the information that is the most important up front. Lawyers and other folks that are involved in arguing on behalf of clients, advocates, and others are often trained to build their argument with building blocks and result in a conclusion. And that's often what we see at People's Law School as kind of the default way that people with legal training will write, is they'll kind of go point 1, point 2, point 3, and that leads to this lovely conclusion. But in fact, it's super important to invert that and do what journalists do, which is start with the most important information. The way journalists talk about it is, don't bury the lead. Don't take your most important thing and bury it way down below and force your reader to wade through all kinds of stuff. Put it up top and then unpack it. Yeah. And so that's partly about how you write, but partly about how you design. So with this one, I'm going to, again, ask for your indulgence, or actually maybe I'll do the getting there on this one and say we could improve the design. We've got, say, 3 of the indicators for that. And
if we can pause here for one moment. I mean, you've said in conversations that we've had, sorry, not to plant words in your mouth, but the idea that incorporating these practices, I mean, yes, that it is great to be able to apply the quality mark to your information, but even looking at each of the indicators that you have here listed, if you were to take your information and just measure it against this checklist and start thinking about how to use the white space, for example, how to create headings, what are the points that I want to really highlight on this page? I mean, if you're not really, maybe you're not able to incorporate all of the best practices or every indicator in each of them, but you can have, you can really increase your impact simply by looking at the checklist and finding ways to incorporate that into your materials.
Totally. I would say that is beautifully captured. The way you've explained that is to incorporate 1 or 2 more practices is success. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's sort of like the point I was trying to make earlier about user testing. You can do full featured user testing with an expert, or you can do some basic level that is going to significantly improve your information and at a much lower cost, or take other steps that are more incremental rather than make yourself feel like you've got to do it all.
Yeah, and I think these indicators and the framework really is helpful for giving clues to follow to start that process.
Awesome. And then the last part of the self-assessment here is on best practice number 8, referring to free or low-cost legal help. So your information follows this if it includes places where people can access justice and includes verified contact information. And on the Dialaw site, like all of our People's Law School information, we try to guide people to a couple of particularly helpful on-point agencies and or options for legal advice. So I will select yes for that one and then click check and then finish the self-assessment. There's a couple of wrap-up questions here. I'm going to, apparently I'm going to put in my address here for the web address, but in fact, I'll say it's Dialaw and checkbox beside this resource is free information primarily intended for use by the public. I'm at People's Law School and doing a kind of short version here. And then I'm committing, this is important, committing to apply the public legal information best practices to the best of my ability. And then I'm finishing the self-assessment. The results are being recorded. Congratulations. With 15 out of 16 points, you qualify to use the quality mark on your information. And here's a link to downloadable files of the mark in 2 orientations and different sizes to meet your needs. So here are the files here, so we can download them in whichever of the landscape or the ribbon format that we think might best suit our needs. And we're inviting folks or encouraging folks to include this pop-up or rollover text with the quality mark where it says this phrase here. And that's the demo.
That's excellent, Drew. Thank you. So we have a few minutes left for anybody who has been following along, who has questions about how to use this self-assessment tool. I'll get started. I've got a question for you that came prior to this, which is, let's say, I mean, it's if you're using a printed source, for example, you're looking at one item, one document. How about if you're doing your self-assessment as you did on a website and you have multiple pages? Would you need to do the assessment on each of the pages?
No. So on the website for Better Legal Information here, we've got a FAQ that addresses a number of questions like this, as well as some question and answers on the self-assessment page here. And as we explain here, what you need to do is complete the self-assessment for at least one page. And then any other pages that are substantially similar to that page in terms of meeting the best practices, then you can use the quality mark on all of those pages. So for example, at Dial Law, we had a couple of different flavors of page, if you will. And so we assessed a couple of different pages. And then the balance of pages were substantially similar in terms of where they place the date and the legal review, the jurisdiction, references for legal help, that kind of thing.
Excellent. And another question is, what kind of materials does the quality mark apply to?
So you can use it as long as you meet those initial building block criteria of it being information primarily aimed at the public in British Columbia and that's free, then, and you meet the, you pass the self-assessment, if you will, then you can use it on any type of materials, whether it's web pages, printed booklets, video, format agnostic, if you will.
Excellent. And I think we had some questions too when we were doing the user testing, that sometimes the materials might fall into a bit of a gray zone where it's not really clear if it's public legal information or if it's something that is similar to that. And do you have any comments on how you might distinguish whether or not the material is something that you could apply the quality mark to?
Yeah. So yeah, it came up around, one of the testers was, their information was more process oriented rather than about a substantive legal topic. So it's more the mechanics of how you go about getting a mediator, for example. And what we're suggesting is that anything that requires the expertise of a legal professional to be confident that it's accurate is something that needs to be legally reviewed. So that almost in all cases involves substantive legal information, like your rights in a certain type of situation to do with work problems or family law problems or what have you, but also information that involves the legal process and other processes that are in that are adjacent to the more formal process of going to court, say, but a process like mediation is adjacent to that and needs someone with expertise in that area to review that information, then that should be reviewed. Probably
Thank
make
you,
that
Drew.
sound way more complicated than it really is, but hopefully that speaks to
I think it helps, and it addresses that question that did come up, right, where the material is a little bit sometimes it might not be obvious. We have a question coming in from one of our participants, and it says, "Can a few user report on an unhelpful legal source?" And I think I
oh
think the question is really, as I understand it, perhaps somebody who has got is using the mark, but maybe the source isn't compliant or it's not helpful.
yeah, so great question. I think I'm still sharing my screen here, yes?
You
And
are, yeah.
we're now looking back at this dialog page that has the equality mark on it. And in addition to this rollover text, we've hyperlinked this mark to a page on the Better Legal Information site. I'll click into it. And by the way, when you finish the self-assessment, you're invited to hyperlink to this page as part of that last explanation on the page after you complete the self-assessment. And so this page is very brief. The entire page is on the screen. It explains for the public how the quality mark helps them. So it helps you find quality legal information. You can be confident it's been developed to be relevant, reliable, and easy to understand. And explains who's behind the mark, and if you have a concern about the use of the mark, then the committee that has been spearheading this work over the last few years will continue to meet. They know this, by the way. This is not a surprise to them, but that to monitor the use of the mark. And so if someone thinks the mark is being used inappropriately, an initial option we're providing is to send us an email, this People's Law School email address, and the committee will dig into the concern. Over time, we hope to get a little fancier in how we're handling this, but this is the first stage.
Thank you, Drew. And we've talked about this as well. The idea that it's a self-assessment that the committee is really putting in the hands of the users the responsibility to assess and sort of monitor themselves in a sense. And you can probably say it better than I've just said it. So.
Yeah, well, in fact, the committee really wrestled with how to approach this around should there be an agency that oversees the mark, what degree of oversight. And so we landed on a self-assessment because we did want to empower information producers to take ownership over using these best practices to the best of their ability, and being both disciplined around thinking of the audience in terms of completing that self-assessment, and also not being too hard on themselves. We actually saw this a bit in the user testing with some of the agencies that produce information, and they gave themselves, I would say, lower scores than what I thought. I thought they'd done a pretty good job on some things, and they were saying no. So don't be too hard on yourself, but at the same time, be thoughtful of your end user, be balanced. And to borrow perhaps this is the wrap-up thought, to borrow, I think it was Peter Parker and Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And so this is an attempt to empower the collective community that produces legal information to support each other in improving the quality of it for our audiences. And with that power comes responsibility to do it in a way that is respectful of the process and trying as best you can to implement the practices.
Super, thank you, Drew. And we have one last question before we're going to wrap up. And so I'll ask you the question, Drew, which is: the quality mark could be applied to a publication addressing a municipal bylaw, assuming the self-assessment was passed. It doesn't have to be a publication focused on provincial law. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah,
Perfect.
totally good question.
And Drew, I'm just going to ask you if you mind closing your screen so I can share
Means.
mine. Okay. And we are wrapping up. Sorry, just one moment. Bear with me. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody who stayed on for this additional workshop. We hope that you found it helpful going through each of the steps. You've now seen what that self-assessment tool looks like, and hopefully you can imagine yourself going through it. If you had your information handy, you may be able to jump right in when we conclude the webinar and get started on that yourself. So, so thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Drew. Really appreciated your presentation today. I think you did a great job of highlighting the different best practices. Do you have any final thoughts before we log out today?
Well, thank you so much for coordinating, and to the committee for all the work done to develop the best practices in the quality market. It really was a collaborative initiative amongst multiple agencies. At People's Law School, we're having the opportunity to kind of share the work here with others, but it was a true collaborative effort and much stronger as a result of that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.